All right, Jesse, here we are again. Good to see you.
You too.
So I do have a follow-up question about some of the stuff that you were talking about last time. Is it okay if I ask you that? So I remember at the end when you were talking about your baptism, sort of an offhanded comment you made in the moment that I found really interesting was you saying that you hadn't gotten baptized up until that point because you feel like you hadn't deserved it.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit, like where that belief came from.
Yeah, it came from, I'm the type of person that's extremely hard on myself. If I make a mistake, I think about it for months, for years. I'm harder on myself than anyone could ever be. And when it came to God and getting baptized, I felt like I'm not a good enough Christian. Like, to be honest, I get bored going to church. A lot of the pastors don't speak to me. I do like the environment, but when I was in high school, my stepmom would tell me, if you come to church, I'll buy you lunch. So I'd always show up like 5 minutes before the service got out and sneak in the back and sit there and be like, see, I came. So I can get lunch, but I didn't like church. I am a believer. I do believe, especially now, I know God is real and Jesus died for my sins, but I felt like I'm not living a Christian life because I'm not going to church. I don't really read the Bible. I cuss a lot. You know, I'm a sinner, but we're all sinners. So when I was in the hospital and the pastor got there, I remember telling him, you know, at no point throughout me getting sick and getting to the point where I'm almost dead, that whole 15 months, did I blame God or ask him why. Because I'm so hard on myself, I just assumed it was my decisions, it's my fault that I'm here.
Wow.
So just, I guess I'm gonna die because of my actions. And I told that to the pastor and he goes, really? I would have been asking God a lot of questions.
Right? That's what I'm sitting here thinking. I feel like a lot of people, if they imagine themselves in that situation, would definitely have some questions for God and probably be pretty pissed at him too.
Yeah, but I guess that's how hard I am on myself. I took the blame, and then I realized that, you know, people say God is love, and I realized as soon as I got baptized and things started to turn around that it doesn't matter that I'm a sinner. The fact that I reached out and publicly showed that despite what I'm going through, I know this is your plan, God. I trust you. Let's do this. I honestly believe God was like, okay, finally, you got baptized. Now I'm going to help you. And that's when everything started turning around.
Yeah, it sounds like when you were finally able to give up control.
Correct. Yeah, when I finally gave the control over to God was when things turned around. And I went from being on my deathbed, could die at any moment, to having a new liver in me within 6 weeks.
It's still so incredible to hear that.
Yeah, it's unheard of. Doctors can't explain it. There's this Dr. King. He's the kidney doctor. He saved me a couple times. He would come in and see, what meds they had me on. He's like, no, I'm gonna change that. And he's changing stuff that's not associated with kidneys, but he is like, they're not treating you right. Hold on, let me fix this. And he'd go out of his way to make sure I was okay. He was my favorite doctor, but he said, I thought for sure you were dead. you are the biggest turnaround I've ever seen in my career. You shouldn't be alive.
Yeah. And that took you giving up control,
Yeah.
right? And it also sounds like that maybe forgiving yourself was a part of that too.
Yeah, I had to forgive myself. I had come to terms with death. I had family members coming to visit me, and they would just break down bawling. And I'm comforting them. You know, I've already come to terms with my death, so I'm not crying. I'm just, it's gonna be fine.
Mm-hmm. It's
Yeah.
interesting though, right? Because I mean, from the conversations that we've had, even before you got sick, right? Oftentimes in your life, you were the strong one, right? You were the one that other people could rely on, and here you are, sitting on your deathbed, and you're still the strong one, still the one comforting other people.
Yeah, I did notice that. I still had people calling me for advice. I still had people calling me to complain about their lives. I'm like, sorry about your bad luck, bro. I'm still in the hospital. I mean, it is what it is, but yeah, I had to let go. I mean, if you really sit there, like close your eyes and think about dying. Like, people are like, oh yeah, you know, I'm not scared to die. But if you really stop and think about it, that everything you ever known from your first breath until now, the world, your family, food, entertainment, sports, your loves, your hates, everything, it's just over.
No more.
No more. You're gone. Forever. It's scary to think about if you really think about it.
And I also think there's a part of that where, you know, me sitting here, or maybe some of the people watching this video, it's a foreign concept to us. Even if we try to wrap our head around it, or even try to put ourselves in that position, we weren't in that same spot that you were in, where you were really at death's door. You have that real experience.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're laying in a hospital bed and you've just been told that you have anywhere from a couple days to a couple weeks left to live, and you're alone, you really dig into that thought.
Mm-hmm.
That I guess it's over. And that made it very hard to say goodbye to my daughter. Like, even when I was telling her that I'm going to be gone very soon, it was still difficult for me to believe.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew it was going to happen. At that moment, I knew I was going to die. I never thought I was going to turn around.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like even still a part of you wasn't fully able to accept that.
Correct. Well, yeah, because you're scared to die. So, you know, I know how people say, you know, I just hope he wasn't in pain when he died. I was thinking in my head, yeah, if I'm gonna die, I mean, this is about as painful of a death as you could go through, what I've been going through.
Yeah, death would be a relief of that
At that
pain.
point, like, yeah, it would have been a relief.
And I don't think anyone would have blamed you, even God, if you had let go sooner and let yourself pass.
Correct. Yeah, like I said, multiple doctors told me to give up. They said most people give up between 2 and 3 months. And at that time I was going on month 13.
Yeah.
And they could see how much pain I was in. You know, arms covered in bruises, legs swollen triple the size. I couldn't fit my feet into shoes or even sandals because they were too swollen. And it hurt too bad because they felt like, you know, a really bad bruise with a fresh tattoo on top of it at all times. Not to mention my swole up.
Oh, wow.
That big.
Wow.
Yeah, it got to the point where I couldn't go pee normal. because my sac was so swollen that all I could do was get towels and just tuck them in where I could and just let release. And then they had me on diuretics, which would make you pee.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd go through like 30 towels a day. But that pain of having your sac, like, it was probably 10 to 12 times the normal size.
Wow.
Yeah.
That had to be a shock.
Yeah, painful shock. Yeah. Yeah, walking to the bed, like walking, moving, everything. My whole body just extreme pain.
I remember you telling
All the
me
time.
just even to stand up, you'd be like winded afterwards and like sweating like you would just run a triathlon or something.
Yeah, when I would be at home, because I would go to the hospital for anywhere from 3 weeks to 2 months at a time, and then I'd be home for 2 weeks to a month, and then back to the hospital if I'm lucky. But even when I was at home, I had to go to the hospital 4 days a week to get blood transfusions or some sort of transfusion, or I still had to go to the hospital and get paracentesis and thoracentesis, get my lungs drained and my abdomen drained 2 times a week, even when I was at home. Otherwise, I would drown. But yeah, when I was at home, when my lungs were filling up, like just trying to pee, the hospital gave me urinals, and I'd be sitting on my recliner, and I'd have to stand up, and just to get to this point, I'd be gasping for air, and by the time I get done peeing, I'd be shaking, sweating, and I'd collapse back in the chair. Like, it was fucking miserable. And if I had to go number 2, which I was also on this stuff called lactulose, because if your liver's not working, the only way to get the poison, the toxins out of your body that your liver normally processes is to go number 2.
Mm-hmm.
So they give you this stuff called lactulose, which is like a laxative times 10, and they want, as soon as the food goes in, they want it coming out. And to get to the bathroom, I would have to stop 2 or 3 times to catch my breath and hang on to something just to get to the bathroom.
How far was the bathroom from your hospital bed, or
From my chair,
chair? Yeah,
20 feet.
20 feet.
Yeah.
So you were having to take a break every 6 or 7 feet to catch your breath because your lungs were so filled with fluid.
Correct. And like same thing, I remember there were times I had an oxygen machine at home with the nasal cannon.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have that turned on to 6 liters of oxygen, and it had a 150-foot hose. And there were times where my breathing was so bad that I would take the cord, and to get down to the car, there's 2 flights of stairs. I would have the oxygen on, and it would take me like 3 or 4 stops to get down the stairs, and then I'd have to hang on the guardrail and wait for my mom to open the door, make sure it's all ready so that I can get in as soon as I can. And as soon as I got in the car, I'd be gasping for air. You feel like you're gonna die. You feel like you're gonna pass out from not being able to breathe.
What is that feeling like?
Remember back when you were in school and they would make you run a mile?
Mm-hmm.
And you try really hard, and by the time you're done running, you're like breathing extremely hard, kind of like that, but from walking 20 feet. But imagine doing that breathing, but you can't breathe in all the way because your lung is full.
What does that feel like? Like not even being able to take a proper breath. Like I can't even wrap my head around that.
It's like, full breath in, but you can only you can't get the extra when you're breathing, it's like
Yeah.
it's like
Very
half breaths.
shallow breaths.
Very shallow breaths. But that's when you're trying to breathe in all the way. You're only getting shallow breaths.
Yeah, you're trying to like take that big breath that fills up your tummy,
Yeah.
right? And like, but you can't even get that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, you know the feeling when you're gonna yawn, like you start to yawn, but then you realize, oh, it's not a big enough yawn, so you're like, and you get that extra gasp in.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get that extra gasp in. It's that unsatisfying first half of the yawn.
Your body is probably screaming for oxygen, and
Yeah.
you're not able to give it what it needs.
Correct. Yeah, the last time I went, the time before I went to the hospital where they told me I only had days left to live, I had just went to the hospital for 9 days. And they said, okay, you're stable enough to go home. At that time, I didn't think I was stable enough, but I wanted to go home, so I said, okay. I got home. I only lasted 2 days at home.
Wow.
And then my mom had to call 911 because I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't breathe. They had 2 paramedics show up, and my oxygen level was down to 83.
What's like a normal oxygen level?
Between 98 and 100.
90 and 100, and you're at 83.
Yeah. So he immediately put on, sometimes they'll do the nasal cannon. I think that's what it's called. I don't remember, but they'll do the thing that goes in your nose.
Mm-hmm.
He said no. This time they put me in the full face mask, strapped me in, turned it all the way up to 15, as high as it could go. And they both lifted me out of the bed into the wheelchair that can go downstairs. They lifted me up onto the
Tourniquet?
no, that's for your arm.
Oh yeah.
The bed that they put you in the ambulance.
Yeah, we know what you're talking about.
What is it? Yeah.
The stretcher.
Stretcher. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was on 15 pounds of oxygen for like a week because I couldn't catch my breath.
What was going through your mind when you're like in that ambulance and you got the face mask on your face and you're going back to the hospital and it hasn't even been like 2 days since you were discharged? What was going through your mind?
I mean, at that moment, all that was going through my mind is I can't breathe. Before this, I've had a fear of drowning. I no longer have that fear. But in that moment, all I could think about was I was just focusing on my breath. Just trying to get enough breath in. And they gave me a bunch of stuff, inhalers and multiple medications to open my lungs up and all this. Nothing was really helping. It took a good 3 weeks before I was breathing somewhat normally again.
Wow.
And that's when they said, you're not getting better, you're getting worse. And then they said, you should go on hospice. And they kept telling me you should go on hospice. I kept saying no. But yeah, a big part of me thought about giving up every day.
But you didn't.
But I didn't.
Why not?
The love for your child is a powerful thing. I remember when I was younger, I'm a man, I'm simple. Men are simple. We get entertained by simple things. So when I was younger, I used to look forward to really stupid stuff, but it kept me excited, happy, I don't know.
Yeah, it's nice to have things to look forward to.
Correct. Like, such as the new Mario game comes out in 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd be, just going through life waiting for that. And then that came out. Oh, the new, Korn CD comes out in 6 months. Cool. And that's how I went through life. And so when I was in the hospital, I changed it to, okay, you just have to make it 6 more days and you get to see your daughter again. I'd only see her for a couple hours. Okay, now you gotta wait 7 days. Now you gotta wait 7 days. Now you gotta wait 7 days. And seeing the look on her face whenever she would come to the hospital, that's what kept me going. Like, she is very tough for her age. And you could tell that it was hurting her seeing me like that. But she put on a brave face. And I did whatever I could to be entertaining when she came to visit me. Like I said, I had my own TV in my hospital room at that point on a moving cart with my Nintendo Switch hooked up. So whenever she'd come visit me, we'd play video games. And I could do that in bed.
Mm-hmm.
And it wouldn't, affect my breathing. But there were other times she'd come to visit me and I'd be half conscious. Because I'm either so exhausted that I haven't slept in days, or I had just gone through a procedure and they put me under, or, hospitals, they're meant to keep you alive. They're not meant to be fun.
Mm. And it sounds like your daughter was being brave for you, but you were also being brave for your daughter.
Yeah. She definitely helped me keep the will to live.
Yeah. I've kind of been sitting here, and I know you talked about how many people did show up for you, right? All the people that showed up for support. But there were still those moments when you were alone, right?
A lot of them.
A lot of time when you were alone. And I've been sitting here kind of thinking about, like, those moments when you were alone, when there weren't the nurses around, when your daughter wasn't there, when your mom wasn't there. What were those moments like?
They were it was time for me to get in my own head. I don't know how to explain it. When I'm alone, my mind races. So when you're in a hospital bed alone, you don't have the best thoughts running through your head. So I would use that time to reflect on my life. Or I would, keep myself entertained. I had all the streaming services to watch movies and TV show and play video games, and I would try my best to stay out of my head.
Try to keep yourself occupied.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like if you were unoccupied, your brain would go to a dark place.
Yeah, because when you're alone, sitting in a hospital, you can't breathe, you have 4 IVs in you, you have a catheter in you, giving up becomes, it looks like a very nice option.
Mm-hmm. A very appealing option.
Very appealing. Yeah. And when the doctors are giving you that option,
telling you to take that option.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to die if you want. We'll help you. I remember one day my stepmom had come in to visit me, and I had just gotten notified that the college hospital in Seattle turned me down for transplant. And at that time, I thought they were the only chance I had. So when they turned me down, I looked at my stepmom and said, "I'm done." She goes, "What do you mean you're done?" I said, "I'm done fighting." why? I have no chance for a transplant.
You lost
Why
hope?
keep? Yeah, at that moment I had lost hope. And I said, I'm done fighting. I'm exhausted. There's no chance for me to get a liver. I'm done. And she very rarely cries. But that, I saw her break down. And she understood. So she understood we were coming to the end of the line. Yeah, I didn't know about Swedish. Actually, I kind of did. I did go to Swedish like 9 months before or a year before, I don't remember. And I met with that doctor I told you about, the very blunt one.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought he hated me. Like, when I first met him, he was typing on his computer and just talking at me, you know, about all the mistakes I've made in my life and just going off. And after that appointment, I'm like, there's no chance they're going to give me a transplant. So I didn't go back. And I'm like, okay, I'll go to UW. And then UW turned me down. I was at UW for 11 days. They didn't even have their liver transplant team. Look at me.
Wow.
Yeah. So, then when I got transferred over to Swedish, that same doctor was the first guy to come in.
Well, you must have been like, oh shit.
Yep. And that's when he's like, I remember you. I'm like, I remember you.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, why didn't you come back? I was like, what? He's like, I had an appointment with you last year. Why didn't you come back? I was like, I thought you hated me. He said, why? I was like, your face.
The words coming out of your mouth?
Yeah. And he's like, no. And he's just like, no. I'm just saying, if we're going to give you a transplant, we got to take this serious. I'm like, duh. Yeah. So, and then he turned out to be the guy to approve my transplant. So, thank you to him.
Yeah.
Actually, one of his nurses or coworkers, I don't think she was his nurse. One of his coworkers, after the transplant, I was talking to her and I said, how long have you worked with him? And she's like, 3 years. Like, have you ever seen him smile? And she goes, no. Like, okay, it's just the way he is. But yeah, what were we talking about?
We got lost there a little bit.
We did.
As we do.
Yeah.
We were talking about like when you were alone.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're alone, it's very easy to get in your own head. It's very easy to get down on yourself. Play the victim. There were days that I played the victim. Oh, woe is me, poor me. Not most days. I think the only times I played the woe is me victim card is when they cut me off from food and water.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'd get pissed.
The restrictions?
Yeah, NPO. Whenever they put me on NPO, I'd get mad.
What's NPO?
Basically means no food or drink of any kind. Nothing in your mouth. Until we say so. And I think the longest I was on NPO was 39 hours.
Wow. So the better part of 2 days.
Yeah. Yeah, and like the only thing they'll let you do during that time is they'll give you like a Q-tip with a sponge on it, and then a cup of ice water, and you can dip the sponge in the ice water and stick it in your mouth and suck on it. That's the only liquid you can get. And believe it or not, even when you're 130 pounds of fluid trapped in your body, you are extremely thirsty because the fluid's not where it's supposed to be, so your brain is still thinking, I'm thirsty.
Yeah. You're still dehydrated.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was known as popsicles at the hospital because I was only allowed to have, depending on the time, sometimes it was only 1,000 milliliters of fluid a day. Sometimes it was 1,200, sometimes it was 1,500. I think the most it was 1,700. That's not a lot. Like this can, 355 milliliters. So like 3 cans of this per 24 hours. And like they'll have a big bottle of water. I get 1 per day.
That's it.
That's it. And I drink a lot of water. But it's like, so now all you're thinking about is, I'm so thirsty, I'm so thirsty. There were times I did sneak in the bathroom and refill my cup, act like I'm going to the bathroom just so I can get a drink of water. I mean, it was...
You have to do what you have to do.
Yeah.
You're in survival mode.
Yeah. So anytime they put me on NPO, that's when I would get irritated. But most of the time, even though I was going through the worst time of my life, I tried to be nice and respectful to the doctors and nurses. I remember one nurse, I had been there for like 4 days, but at this point it was like day 150 overall that I'd been in the hospital. One nurse came walking by and she just glanced in, Jesse! And she ran in and gave me a hug. She's like, how long have you been here? Like, the nurses knew me at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But being alone, you know, like people say, when you're in solitary confinement, you can go insane.
Yeah.
From being alone.
Yeah.
That won't happen in a hospital because nurses come in every 2 hours. So even when you're alone, you're not alone. You're more annoyed because it's very hard to get sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the middle of the night, they come in every 2 hours.
Yeah, they have to do their rounds.
Yeah, so 2 a.m. they wake me up. I have to give them my arm to get my blood pressure. They have to take my temperature. I have to give them my finger for my oxygen. And then I go back to sleep. 4 a.m. they come around. 6 a.m. And it's like clockwork, except for with meds. Whenever it's time for my meds, I have to call them and remind them. They're just busy, but...
Mm-hmm. For their rounds, well, and then like you're spending, you're saying you're spending the better part of 15 months in a hospital, and they're waking you up every 2 hours overnight. I mean, you must have been exhausted on top of everything else that was going on.
Yeah, I was extremely exhausted. I was living off of half the amount of blood that people usually do. I was drowning in my own body. I was in excruciating pain all the time, swole up to double this, 130 pounds of fluid. I was in bad shape.
Yeah. I mean, you were walking through hell, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's like a new song I've been listening to. He says, 6 feet in the dirt, but still breathing. That's how I felt, like.
Literally, though.
I felt like a walking corpse. And I looked like it, too. I looked strange. Like, my arms were tiny, but my legs were massive. Like, from here up, I looked like a scrawny man. And then from here down, I looked like a triple XL.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like the water was just going down. Gravity, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and there were times when my bladder would quit working, and trying to pee was so painful I would tear up. So then I called them and they said, okay, we're gonna put a catheter in. And the first nurse didn't numb it. She just
Went for it.
Yeah, and I had both my hands on the guardrails and I was shaking. When she got done, she goes, "You look like you just saw a ghost." And I was in shock at how bad that hurt. And then they drained like 800 milliliters of fluid, but I'm on diuretics. So they took the catheter back out. 2 hours later, I had to go again. Then the second nurse, she came in. She's like, okay, we're gonna put a catheter back in. I was like, why can't you leave it in? Well, the doctor has to approve that, but we're gonna put a catheter in for now. So I told her about what happened with the first nurse. She's like, she didn't numb it? I said, no. She's like, hold on. She goes and she gets lidocaine. And for those of you that don't know, they take your thing and then they inject lidocaine down your tip. Deeper and deeper, and then they give it a few seconds to numb. And then they dip the tube in lubricant and then they slide it in. Second one, that wasn't terrible. So then she pulled it out after. And 2 hours later, I had to go again. Third nurse, I got 3 different nurses with this. You lose all your dignity in the hospital. 3 different nurses grabbing my dick and shoving stuff in it. I told her how the second nurse did it. She goes, I know how to do it. And then she took the lidocaine and mixed it with the lubricant. And then like dipped the tube in that. And then she stuck it in. Before she stuck it in, I go, that's not gonna give it time to numb.
Yeah.
You gotta numb it first. She's like, I know what I'm doing. And then she shoved it in, and it felt just like the first one. And then after I got done draining, she went to pull it out, and I grabbed her arm, and I said, you're not taking it out. Call the doctor, it's staying in. And she did, and it was in for like a week.
Wow. We are running out of time,
Yeah.
so we do need to wrap it up. But I'm just sitting here